Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I'm also the host of Moms Don't Have Time to Lose Weight, and I'm the editor of the anthology, which you should run out and buy, called Moms Don't Have Time to, a Quarantine Anthology. All proceeds of that book go to COVID-19 vaccine research. And I'm the editor-in-chief of Moms Don't Have Time to Write, a new publication on Medium, and we're accepting submissions, so please send your personal essays there. And if all that isn't enough, you can follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens, and my website is zibbyowens.com. Okay, now back to this amazing podcast. I am so thrilled that Faherty brand is back being my sponsor again because, as many of you know, because I talk about them a lot and I post about them a lot, Faherty is like my favorite clothing brand right now. It is fashionable enough that I always feel good wearing it, super comfortable, very forgiving, and just really cool. So I'm so excited. They're my sponsor. You can get a discount with fahertybrand.com/Zibby, and you'll get 20% off. Again, that's fahertybrand.com/Zibby. You get 20% off. And a few other things that you should know about Faherty, aside from the fact that I'm living in their dresses for this summer, is that they're a family-run brand fueled by purpose and optimism. They make high-quality, sustainably minded, feel-good favorites that you'll be proud to wear. I certainly am. They believe in family, quality, sustainability, and community. Summer is in their DNA, and they've created many staples for the summer, sustainably minded with the highest of quality, comfort, and versatility, and all are made for life, which I can 100% attest to, and you should definitely go check it out. So again, fahertybrand.com/Zibby for 20% off. Go try it out. Susan Groner is the author of Parenting with Sanity and Joy, 101 Simple Strategies. Sue and I did an Instagram Live, and this is the recording of that, but I wanted to share it with all of you because it had some great tips. Sue Groner is the founder of The Parenting Mentor, which provides on-site and virtual coaching sessions for parents of toddlers through teens. As a University of Pennsylvania Wharton School graduate and a former advertising executive, Groner uses her training in creative problem solving, along with her CLEAR, C-L-E-A-R-R, trademarked methodology to help parents foster and maintain a more fulfilling and stress-free experience while in the trenches of day-to-day child rearing. Groner is a certified positive discipline parent educator and lives in New York with her husband and 2 children.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for doing this. So fun.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, okay. Tell everybody about your book, how you became the parenting mentor, what we need to know this Mother's Day before we, implode. Give us some insight.
Exactly. Well, first of all, I became the parenting mentor kind of by default in a way. I wasn't always a great mom. I'll just say my kids are now 21 and just 24. So been there, done that, and learned a lot. And I went through a phase where I was this really anxious, stressed out mom. And as my kids got a little bit older, into their teens, I realized I had wasted all this time stressing out and trying to get them to do things. And just, it was awful. I'm sure you know that feeling sometimes where you worry about all these little things. And, I like to joke that I now have the benefit of the retroactive crystal ball, and I can look into it and see like all that stuff was just a real waste of time and debilitating to me in a way, and not great for my kids either. And so as I started to learn that they were going to evolve and develop in their own ways and on their own time, but they were going to get there when they were ready to, it made a huge difference to me. And so I realized that, rather than looking at parenting as this like 18-year engineering project, which so many of us do, not consciously, but we think we need to do that. We need to get our kids ready so they can get into a good college and then get a good job and have a great life. And we know that's definitely not a path that works all the time at all. And that instead, let's raise our kids to be self-reliant and resilient with good problem-solving skills and good coping mechanisms. Because then at the end of the day, when they go out on their own, they will be able to handle whatever it is that life throws at them. Good, bad, in between, doesn't matter. And from the littlest thing to a really big issue. They'll be able to, when my daughter went to college and she was a freshman and she's like, Mom, half the kids here don't even know how to book their own train ticket. And so, that a little thing like that. And then she saw so much dysfunction with these kids who had been kind of pampered and taken care of, and every problem they had was fixed, that when they got to college and they had issues, they were either freaking out, falling apart, constantly calling their parents. They didn't know what to do. So they could be great students and do well in exams and papers, and they could get involved in extracurricular activities, but they couldn't survive in life. And so I think that if we look at our role that way, everything changes. And, as the parenting mentor, my goal is really to help parents be happier and more relaxed, to reduce the everyday stress and anxiety that inevitably comes from being a parent, from having a child. Like, you're just going to worry, and so how can you not? How can you reframe things? How can you have a new perspective on things? And so if you buy into my concepts, then all of a sudden, all the stuff that you feel you need to fix or that you're worried about become opportunities for your kids to develop these problem-solving skills and coping mechanisms and resiliency.
So when am I supposed to teach my kids how to book their train tickets? How old should the kids be? When should we make that a project?
Well, it doesn't have to be like their train ticket, but it can definitely be if you're planning a trip. Have your older kids, anyone, have them see what you do. Have them learn how to do those things, what it takes to, book an airline ticket. I remember when my son graduated from high school, he went to Europe with some friends, and I guess there was the big time difference. And I think he was in Greece, and, he pretty much booked that whole trip. But one of the legs, I think my husband had taken care of for him. And the name on the ticket was wrong. And, by the time we got in touch with him, he had already figured out how to, and dealt with it. His friends left, he changed the ticket, and he went on another plane. But he did it himself. And it was great. Like, he didn't freak out. He's like, I can handle this. And he did. It's just like every little step along the way, they can, at a certain point, your kids can start packing for themselves. They can start thinking, with our guidance, what are the clothes that I need? What am I going to, what cosmetics do I need? My toothbrush and toothpaste, and just those little things that first of all, we give them a lot more respect. When we allow them to do those things, we're saying, hey, you know what? You're a smart kid. You can figure this out. I think you can handle this. And the more responsibility we give them, the more empowered they feel and the better they feel. And the less we have to do, the less we have to worry, which is the ultimate result, the ultimate goal.
So why do you think you were such an anxious mom? And why do you think other moms are filled with this sort of second guessing and anxiety and all of the negatives that you're trying to combat?
Yeah, I was an anxious mom because I had these expectations and these ideas for the way that I thought my kids should be and act and do, and what was going to set them up for this positive. I was doing that 18-year engineering project, and I realized it was such a bad thing for everyone. And I got out of that business pretty fast when I realized it. The other business I got out of was the rescue business, which is another great, it's these, like, without rescuing, you're providing them with these opportunities to learn to cope and to create problems, do problem solving and learn life skills. And, my daughter was oversleeping and missing the bus when she was in high school, and she would come and wake us up and, can you drive me to school? And, it was just unpleasant, the whole thing, right? I didn't want to have to rush, but God forbid, I felt, she should be late for school on my watch, instead. And then we finally said, you know what, sweetie? And one of the big keys here is that when you make these shifts and you stop fixing and rescuing and all of that stuff, it's not in a punitive way. It's not in a, I'm sick of this, I'm done. Or I've done this too many times, you're on your own now. It's not like that. It's like, hey, you know what, honey? This waking up and us driving to school, like it's just not good for anybody, and you old enough to get up on your own. So, use your alarm clock, use your phone, whatever you want to do. And here's a number for a taxi. And, because we were in the suburbs at the time. And, here's the number for the taxi and you pay for it. She was earning money. She was tutoring. She was spending all her money on clothes and accessories and what a, teenage girl likes to do. And that was that. And it was hard the first time she overslept to not go in there and wake her up. But it worked. It totally worked. A couple of times. That was it. And it works like that with anything. And if our kids forget something at home and we're like, oh my gosh, they need this at school because what if they don't have it? And then we go down that path. Well, if they don't have it, then this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And then they're, not going to get the scholarship for sports because they're going to miss the game or whatever the silly thing is. That's so not true. We say, hey, you know what? This is good. This is going to give them more opportunity to learn to remember things. It's about the process and the big goals. It's not about what happens today or what happens tomorrow. If we work with our kids to say, hey, you know what? Instead of fighting all the time about screen time, right? We engage them and we say, hey, you know what, sweetie? How much time do you think is reasonable for screen time every day? And listen to what they say. And then say, you know what? We may be thinking, really? That's all they asked for? Or we may be thinking, no freaking way. That's way too much. But we'll go, you know what? I don't know. Let's give it a try for a week or two. There's no harm in that. But the key is, sweetie, if you want this time, you're now going to be responsible for monitoring your own time. And that becomes the big lesson. That's the life skill, ultimately. And so if the way they're working on monitoring their own time, and you might want to have a conversation about it too. Like, well, what do you think would be a good way to monitor your time? Okay, try that and see if it works, and give it a week and not say anything. And if your kid's on for an extra 15 minutes, it's not going to matter. In the scheme of life, what's going to matter is that then they're going to come back and say, after that week, you're going to talk about it. Well, how did that work? How can you tweak that? What do you maybe want to try something else? And so while they're learning that skill, they're also learning about trial and error, which I love. We talk a lot about how we want our kids to make mistakes. Failure is good, right? But failure and mistakes have negative connotation, right? We don't like the way that sounds. No one does. Trial and error assumes that there's going to be mistakes, assumes it's not going to work, that you're going to have to do this a number of times. And then there's no judgment. And when there's no judgment, nobody feels badly. No one feels like they're being judged. It's just, okay, that didn't work great. Let's try something else. What's the next step? Okay. And you maybe have to do that 10 times. But eventually you're teaching your kids to figure this out on their own, that it's such a great problem-solving tool.
I had something happened today that this conversation is making me think of. This morning we did an early Mother's Day celebration because my kids will be with my ex-husband this weekend and whatever. Anyway, so we had it this morning and my husband made us all these chocolate chip pancakes and also eggs and a whole spread. It was amazing.
So nice.
And so we all sat down and had a full-on meal at the dining room table for breakfast with paper plates and everything and these chocolate chip pancakes. And then, right as we were finishing, my husband walks back in carrying a plate of cookies. And I was like, no. That's enough. We don't also need chocolate chip cookies. And, so I said it to him like that, no. And he's like, well, and then of course my daughter's like, well, you had 2 chocolate chip pancakes. What's the difference? Why don't I just have the cookie? And I was like, okay. So finally my husband's like, why don't you let the kids decide if they want the cookie or not? And I was like, huh. So he was like, do you guys think you could eat like half a cookie before breakfast and still be like not flying off the wall? And they were like, sure. Meanwhile, they're 6 and 7, right? The ones he
Yeah.
was talking to. So he put the cookies out, and then my son took the cookie. He's like, oh yeah, I definitely want it. I'll take that one. And my daughter's like, yeah, I'll take that one. And then they finished, they went back to their pancakes. And my son took one bite of the cookie and he was like, that's too sweet. I'm done. And my daughter, with the cookie on her plate, decides she finishes her pancake and was like, actually, I'm full. And I was like, wow, this is like my bad parenting, right? Like,
no. It's not bad parenting.
Like, I was so concerned with making the right decision for them and not providing them with the opportunity. And then my husband was encouraging them and empowering them to make the decision themselves. And so they did. And like, that's the whole key, right? To building independence is not what I do. It's like, what you did, even though I was so annoyed at the time. Not annoyed, but like, I don't know. So what do you think about like putting out the platter of cookies, right? Making it so that they have to decide, they have to be the ones who are empowered to figure out what's right for them.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to give guidance and to let them know and to recognize like, wow, when you eat a lot of sugar, you know how that makes you feel. And so it's a process that when they do and they feel that way, that we say, hey, you feel that way because think of the things that you ate, and we can teach them about when you put certain things in your body, how they give you different feelings. But ultimately, unless they have the feeling, they're not going to get it. They're not going to know. It's like I tell parents that have little kids who have that control, that struggle with put your shoes on, put on this raincoat. You can't go and we can't do this. We can't do that until this happens. Right. And then all it is this control struggle. And the kid always wins, because you lose by getting into the whole conflict. Even if you end up forcing your child to do this and then they're crying and it's just terrible. And it's like, let your kid go outside and get wet. Let them go outside without shoes on and say, okay, we're just going to bring your shoes along with us. And if they kind of like, what? And they can start walking down the street in bare feet, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to hurt. They're not going to like it. And then they're going to say, I want to put my shoes on. And instead of, well, I told you to put your shoes on, which is what we want to say, of course, we go, yeah, that's why people like to wear shoes. That's why people wear raincoats or use umbrellas, right? It's just this general statement. Now you know what it feels like. And now you know why most people do this. And then it's like all of a sudden, we let go of so much of this control stuff, which drives us crazy. And, you can't control another human being. And when kids know that they have little control, that's why, we hear the terrible twos. It's about them recognizing that they have some control in their life and they want to exert it. And so we need to give them the space to be able to do that within boundaries and, let them feel like they have it.
It's excellent advice. And your book is obviously filled with all of this excellent advice.
Yeah, the book is I wrote it because when I was a young mom and reading, or I was a mom with young kids, I should say, I was reading all these parenting books and they made me crazy. Like, first of all, and even now there's even more to choose from, but this plethora of parenting books to pick from made me nervous, like which is the one I should be reading. And then when I started reading them, I felt that I was doing everything wrong and I felt judged and I'm already screwed up my kids. And I would try something new and my husband would be like, you're reading a new book, aren't you? And so I wanted to give parents a book that had like easy, actionable tips. You can pick up this book and read one tip and put it down. If it resonates with you, try it. If it doesn't, move on to something else, and there's no judgment. And it kind of makes you feel, a lot of parents have said they feel good reading this book because they either do some of the things, it's a good reminder for them, or nothing feels too challenging. I have one here. It's just like it's cute and it's fun right here. It's just little tips, just easy. There's cute. Let me find an illustration somewhere. Here's one. This is a tip I really like too. Where is it? It's your child is not a mini me. I remember the moment I realized that. I used to love to play the piano as a kid, and I would be told to have to stop practicing. Like I loved and loved to play. And my daughter really wanted to play, and she was taking lessons, and she didn't love practicing. She just didn't love, and I'm like, I said to her, Victoria, why aren't you practicing? And, like, why aren't you into this? And she's like, Mom, she's like, I'm not you. She's like, I don't like it the way you like it. Mm-hmm. And that was the moment that's like, aha, you're your own person. You get to pick the things you like to do. I'm going to be there to help support you in those things. I may offer up suggestions, but I've learned that our children are just completely different human beings than we are. And, they're going to have their own goals and their own dreams and their own passions. They're completely different from us. They may think completely different from us. On my podcast yesterday, it's a recording, but I talked to this dad whose 21-year-old son was, kind of this like pot smoking guy in high school, was always getting into trouble. And, he had a hard time with that. But then his son decided to take a totally different path and became a very, very religious, Orthodox Jew in Israel. Mm. And a completely different thing from anything in his life. And he was struggling with that. And I'm like, you don't get to pick, and as a parent, as our kids get older, it's so important that they know that we're there with love and support and validation for what they're doing, and not to judge what they're doing or to be disappointed, or, and this is the most important part, to give unsolicited advice, which can be really hard too.
That's impossible. I can't even try.
Well, your kids, how old's your oldest now?
I have almost 14-year-old twins. They'll be 14 next month. So
yeah. It becomes more about well, what do you think?
No,
instead of, well, why don't you do this? Well, maybe you should do that. Blah, blah, blah. No, well, what do you think you should do? What do you think you could do? How do you think you should handle this? What might you do differently next time?
To your point on kids being different from you and being different from each other, I feel like that's the main thing I've learned with having 4 kids. They are completely different from each other. They are born the way they're born. They come with these presets. They don't same clothes as each other, as me. They're totally different people, as well they should be, because they actually are completely different people. So yes, I feel like had I only had my twins, I might not have seen some of these things as clearly. But
and how lucky that you get to experience all these different people in your life and watch them grow and develop and change. And, my daughter was pretty much the same from the time she was born till now to 24. My son, in so many ways, a completely different person. And so those fears and anxieties that we might have as parents when we look at our kids, who maybe they don't care about their work when they're 12 years old. Maybe they don't seem to have a drive. They're 12. They're 12, or they're 10 or they're 8 or they're 14, or it doesn't matter. When it's right for them, it happens. It almost always happens. I mean, my son became a person I never imagined he would have become, and I still now at 21, and I still see every year, I see him growing and changing. It's a little more subtle now as he gets a little older, but I see it happening. And, they say your brain's not developed until 25. And even with my daughter at 24 now, I see her growth and her maturity as well. And it's amazing, but I'm there more to watch it and support it than I am to even I don't even guide that much anymore. A little, I'll be there and comment on certain things I see, but I'm careful.
Well, Sue, hold your book up. Tell people watching where they can get it, what it's called. Awesome.
Okay, it's Parenting with Sanity and Joy, 101 Simple Strategies, which is exactly what it is. And you can get it wherever books are sold. It's in Target stores right now, and it's pretty much available online everywhere, independent bookstores, Amazon, of course, Barnes & Noble, et cetera, et cetera.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sue, for coming on and talking about your book and giving me some really great advice that I will go off, and be thinking about. This is a great Mother's Day gift and book to have on the shelf and everything. So thanks for joining before Mother's Day. And
You're welcome. Happy Mother's Day to you.
Mother's Day. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much to Faherty Brand for being my sponsor again. Go to fahertybrand.com/Zibby for 20% off. Enjoy. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.